Can you really live in Japan by studying calligraphy? The answer is yes. This is how we moved to Osaka on a Japanese cultural activities visa. Welcome to Unretired in Japan, where we're documenting what life after early retirement really looks like. Let's go. We knew we wanted to live in Japan. After several visits, we had fallen in love with the culture, the food, the safety, the public transportation, and the overall quality of life. The challenge wasn't deciding where we wanted to live, it was figuring out how we could legally stay. For most visitors, Japan allows a stay of up to 90 days as a tourist. If you want to live in Japan longer than that, you'll need a visa that matches your reason for being in Japan. So we started researching every option we could find. A work visa wasn't the right fit because we weren't planning to get jobs in Japan. A student visa is generally intended for people enrolled in full-time academic programs, and that wasn't why we wanted to move. A business manager visa requires starting and actively operating a business in Japan, which wasn't part of our retirement plans. A spouse visa only applies if you're married to a Japanese citizen, and permanent residency is something most people qualify only after they've already been living in Japan under another eligible visa. As we worked through the list, one thing became very clear. Japan doesn't offer a retirement visa. That meant we needed to find another legal pathway that matched both our situation and our goals. Eventually, we came across a visa we'd never heard of before. The Cultural Activities Visa allows foreign nationals to live in Japan while studying traditional Japanese arts and culture under the guidance of an approved school, organization, or instructor. Unlike a work visa, the primary purpose isn't employment, and unlike a traditional student visa, you aren't enrolling in a university or working toward a degree. The purpose is to seriously study one of Japan's recognized cultural traditions. Those activities include calligraphy, tea ceremony, flower arranging, pottery, martial arts, traditional music, theater, and some other forms of traditional Japanese culture. As we researched those options, one immediately stood out: Japanese calligraphy. Allison has always enjoyed drawing, painting, and other artistic hobbies, so learning Japanese calligraphy felt like a natural fit. It's an art form with centuries of history, and studying it in Japan with an experienced instructor sounded far more interesting than simply taking a class back home. Just as important, it satisfied the requirements of the Cultural Activities Visa. As we continued researching, we found another detail that made this option even more practical. If Allison qualified for the Cultural Activities Visa, I could potentially qualify for a dependent visa as her spouse. That meant we didn't need to find two different visa pathways. We needed one approved school that could sponsor Allison's program and guide us through the application process. Once we understood that, our search became much more focused. The next step was finding the right school. There are plenty of places where you can learn Japanese calligraphy. There are far fewer schools that are experienced in sponsoring students for a Japan Cultural Activities visa. After researching our options, we found Calligraphia Japan in Osaka. Their program is specifically designed for international students who want to study Japanese calligraphy while living in Japan under a cultural activities visa. Their website answered many of our initial questions. It explained the program, class schedules, tuition, what was expected of students, and how they guide applicants through the Certificate of Eligibility process, which is one of the first major steps towards obtaining a long-term visa for Japan. The tuition was approximately 500,000 yen, or about 3,500 US dollars, for 1 year of study. That included a year of instruction, all of the calligraphy equipment that would be required, and the school's assistance in preparing and submitting the Certificate of Eligibility application. Before we officially enrolled, Allison had a Zoom meeting with the school. It gave her a chance to meet with a professor, a sensei, ask questions, and make sure the program was a great fit before moving forward. She was also able to take a practice calligraphy lesson. Since we were still living in the United States, almost everything else happened by email. One thing that immediately impressed us was how responsive they were. Every email was written in English, usually answered within a day, and every question we had was addressed clearly. We asked about the weekly class schedule, how much practice was expected outside of class, the visa sponsorship process, the overall timeline, whether Allison qualified for the cultural activities visa, and how I could apply for a dependent visa. Once Allison enrolled, the school sent us a checklist explaining exactly what documents they needed from us, including passport copies, financial information, application forms, photographs, and the supporting paperwork required for the Certificate of Eligibility application. On their end, they prepared the documents required in Japan and submitted Allison's Certificate of Eligibility application to immigration. My application was a little different. Because I was applying for a dependent visa, I hired a licensed Japanese immigration scrivener to prepare my own certificate of eligibility application. The scrivener worked directly with Calligraphia Japan throughout the process so that both applications moved forward together. That service cost us about 800 US dollars in addition to the school's tuition. If you've never heard of a certificate of eligibility or COE, it's not the visa itself. It's an official document issued by Japan's Immigration Services Agency confirming that you meet the requirements for the status of residence you're applying for. Once it's approved, you take that document to your local Japanese embassy or consulate to apply for the actual visa. Once both certificates of eligibility applications had been submitted, there wasn't much left for us to do. The waiting began. Eventually, both certificates of eligibility were approved, and the original documents were mailed to us in Florida. Since we lived in Orlando, our next step was scheduling an appointment at the Japanese Consulate in Miami to apply for our visas. The appointment itself was straightforward. We submitted our passports, visa application, certificates of eligibility, marriage certificate, and supporting documents. After another short wait, we received the news we'd been hoping for. Our visas had been approved and were ready to be picked up within a week. One thing that's important to understand is the timing. Once your certificate of eligibility is issued, you have a limited amount of time to use it to obtain your visa and enter Japan. Exactly 3 months. After you arrive, the 1 year period for the cultural activities visa and the dependent visa begin. The school coordinated everything with us throughout the process. They kept us informed, answered our questions quickly, and made sure we understood each step before moving on to the next. They also understood that relocating halfway around the world takes time. Instead of expecting Allison to begin classes immediately, they gave her a few weeks after arriving in Osaka to settle into our apartment, register with the city, open bank accounts, and get established before classes started. That made the transition much easier. With our visas and our passports, we booked our flights, packed the last of our belongings, and started our new life in Japan. Once we were settled in our apartment, it was finally time for Allison's first class. One of the reasons we chose our apartment was its location. It's about a 20-minute walk from the school, or just 2 train stops away, which takes about 12 minutes. That gives Allison the flexibility to walk on nice days or take the train when it's raining or during Osaka's hot summer months. The cultural activities visa isn't simply about signing up for a class. You're expected to actively participate in your program. For Allison, that means attending 90-minute calligraphy classes Tuesday through Friday. And every other Monday, she also attends a 90-minute class focused on seal carving, the traditional art of carving stone seals that are used to stamp finished calligraphy pieces. That schedule has become part of our weekly routine. So, what actually happens in class? The classes are very hands on. There aren't long lectures or written exams. Most of the time is spent practicing. Students work with traditional brushes, ink, and paper while learning proper brush technique, stroke order, balance, and character formation. As students complete each page of practice, one of the senseis reviews their work, points out areas for improvement, demonstrates the correct technique, and then sends them back to practice again. That cycle repeats throughout the class. Most of Allison's work is completed during class, while the instructors are available to provide immediate feedback. She does practice at home from time to time, but having experienced teachers watching every stroke is where the biggest improvements happen. One thing Allison noticed right away was the quality of the instruction. The senseis are true masters of Japanese calligraphy. They're patient, encouraging, and they spend time working individually with every student, regardless of experience. Another surprise was how international the classroom is. Allison has classmates from all over the world: Mexico, Spain, Hong Kong, Switzerland, France, Italy, some from the United States, but also Australia, New Zealand, and other countries. The ages are just as diverse. Some students are in their 20s, others are retired and in their 70s. Language turned out to be much less of a barrier than we expected. Allison speaks some Japanese, but she's far from fluent. That hasn't been a problem. Many of the instructors speak English, many students communicate in English, and because calligraphy is such a visual art, much of the instruction is demonstrated rather than explained. Watching the instructor, practicing the technique, receiving feedback, and trying again becomes a language that everyone in the room understands. For anyone considering this visa, that's probably one of the biggest takeaways. You don't need to be fluent in Japanese before you arrive. You need to be willing to learn, practice, and improve. Cultural Activities Visa isn't a retirement visa, and it isn't designed for people who simply want to live in Japan without participating in a program. Allison is expected to attend classes regularly, continue making progress in her studies, and remain actively involved in the program throughout the year. At the same time, my dependent visa has allowed me to share this experience with Allison. While she's in class, I often spend time exploring Osaka, working on the YouTube channel, or simply enjoying everyday life in Japan. I also do house chores and laundry. Every family's situation is different, and there are several ways people legally move to Japan. This just happens to be the path that worked for us. If you're considering a cultural activities visa, we hope sharing our experience has given you a clearer picture of what's involved, from finding a sponsoring school and applying for the visa to understanding what daily life as a student is actually like. When we started researching how to live in Japan, we had never even heard of the cultural activities visa. Today, it's the reason we're able to call Osaka home. We hope this video answered some of your questions and gave you a realistic look at what the process actually involves. On Unretired in Japan, we're documenting what life after early retirement really looks like. That includes moving overseas, navigating visas, managing finances, exploring Japan, and sharing the everyday experiences that come with building a new life abroad. If that's something you're interested in, we'd love to have you follow along. Until next time, we are Unretired in Japan.